Hello and welcome to the Practice Marketing Podcast, highlighting successful strategies from North America's fastest growing clinics and experts so you can learn from their wins and power your practice growth. Hi, I'm your host, Neil Triggett, CEO of Practice Promotions, and today we're going to talk with Jimmy McKay from the Pintcast. And once a rock radio DJ, he's now a doctor of physical therapy. Jimmy launched the Pintcast to spotlight the voices, the ideas, and the bold moves shaping the future of rehab. So since then, he's interviewed hundreds of guests and probably spilled just as many pints in the process. And his mission is to make healthcare conversations way less boring and way more useful. And so now the Pintcast has been downloaded 5+ million times by listeners who want to think differently, act boldly, and grow smarter. So whether they're on the clinic floor, in class, or building their own empire, it's great to have you on the podcast here. Jimmy, welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's weird being in the guest seat because I'm usually the guy with the questions, but let's do this thing. Let's do this.
Awesome. Yeah, and hopefully our listeners have listened to you before. If they haven't, it's great to connect with you on pintcast.com or on Apple or Spotify. So it's great topics on there, all kinds of different realms within the industry. So I'm looking forward to hearing your take on things as we talk to lots of different people there. But my very first important question is, do you drink a pint of beer every day on these podcasts?
So, no. And, if people listen, they've noticed I used to ask people what they were drinking. And back when I started the show, it was 9.5 years ago. I did this thing 9.5 years ago. You still had to explain to someone what a podcast was, what it was, never mind even how they get it. And why they should, listen or download this thing. And I started as a PT student, and four students, myself and three others, would go to this little bar next to our school after class, blow off steam after class or after a test. And we'd talk about stuff we learned, or we continued it when we were in our clinical rotations. And it was just more of a real conversation. So we were just sort of going with the angle. We wanted to make sure people understood this was conversation, not presentation. So that's why when you look at it, doesn't make any sense. The logo's a beer, but it's about healthcare. Why would you do that? If I had to go back and change the name, would I? Yes, because it started as one thing and it sort of morphed into a lot of different things. It grew, like me and like you and like everybody else. So I sort of went with it. So do I drink a beer at every episode? No, because now I'm 45 and I started this thing when I was 35. So beer doesn't hit me. Plus, I'm talking at all hours. It's 10 a.m. where I am. So people might question me if I was drinking beers on Friday at 10 a.m.
I think so. That's awesome. And so, you're a physical therapist here. You've done a lot in the industry. I'm curious, can you tell our audience a little bit about your story?
Yeah, I did the morning announcements in 6th grade in middle school, and I went home and was like, I want to do that to my mom. I was like, I want to do that forever. And went to school for journalism and communications. Wound up doing an internship with a guy by the name of Howard Stern. I was at a radio station called K-Rock his last summer before he went to XM and left terrestrial radio. And then I got a chance to go back to my hometown in upstate New York and run a radio station there. I was the second in command at my hometown radio station. Then left and went to Pennsylvania, and I got to run my own radio station at 24 years old. I was running a radio station. In hindsight, that is a bad idea to give a 24-year-old their own radio station if you think about it. But I was in. I wanted the business of radio, the business of communications. I loved every aspect of it, and had 11-year-old Jimmy knew that 24-year-old Jimmy was going to be running radio stations. It would have been like, you hit the lottery, man. This is it. And I did that. Got my second radio station to run at the same time. So I was juggling stations. I was on the air. So busy, so crazy, but I loved all of it. I could say I loved all of it. Did that for, a decade plus. And then a guy by the name of Steve Jobs walked out onto a stage with a turtleneck and jeans and introduced the world to this thing called the iPhone. And a few months later, I'm driving home from the radio station, and a buddy of mine from the West Coast texted me a link. And that wasn't even a thing. You really couldn't do that. We didn't call it the iPhone 1. It was just iPhone. That's all we knew. And I remember I clicked the link and I was listening to KROQ, a radio station out of LA. I was listening to that in my car in Pennsylvania. And I realized that time and space weren't going to matter anymore. The world, it was like that scene from Inception when they're fighting in the hallway. The whole world just shifted. Even though no one else knew it, I ran into work the next day and I was like, I need everybody in the building, all the VPs of everything. You got to come in this conference room. I'm like, look what I can do. I click this button. I listen to a radio station, not in our area. How are we going to compete with this? And, not to name names, but I was sort of patted on the head and told like, just get back to your office, go back to the studio, play some Guns N' Roses. Don't worry about this. It's not an issue. Radio has seen challengers. Radio saw TV come and we're fine. And there was a long time between newspaper, TV came along, or sorry, radio came along, TV came along, and they sort of lived in harmony, right?
Mm-hmm.
They understood where the market share was. Then the internet came around, and I think a lot of people just said, it's a fad, it's this thing, how's this, we're traditional media, of course. I mean, that's how Rome falls, is when everybody says we're fine and we don't need to adapt. That's how
Mm-hmm.
dinosaurs happen. And I didn't look at it like that. I got real nervous and squirrely. So I did the average like middle-aged dude thing. I was like, I'm gonna go to law school because I was dating a girl at the time. Her dad was a lawyer. So I was like, I'm gonna be a lawyer. And that did not last long. That did not last long. Went to business school for a year, liked it, didn't love it. And then I was training for a triathlon and I would go to like a meetup every Wednesday to ride bikes with people in the local area. And one of the guys in charge was like a PT. And I was like, I don't know. He talks to people all day. This feels like it's internet proof or whatever that meant at the time in 2008, 2009. So I decided to go to PT school. So 2 years I was on the air in a radio studio with a physics book because I was taking my prerequisite courses because, of course, as a journalism major, none of my prereqs transferred over. And then went to PT school in Virginia, actually, in Arlington, Virginia at Marymount University, and hung up my headphones and microphone and was going to be done until, and I'm sure you've been there and the people listening have been there, I was in a room full of 500 people at an APTA Virginia thing,
Mm-hmm.
listening to a speaker talk about something that I didn't understand. Fast forward 2 hours later, I'm at the networking hour, and I'm like, I freaking paid $200. Like, I'm going to learn something. And I saw the speaker, and I was like, hey, man, I'm Jimmy. I'm a student. Can you explain your presentation, what you meant? And like 12 minutes later, I understood everything. None of the topics were over my head. But when he was on stage, he was giving a presentation. And
Mm.
in the bar, we were having a conversation. And our brains are wired for one and not the other.
Right.
And to give and receive. Presentations are awkward unless that's all you do, right? But we're also wired to receive and converse and give feedback in facial expressions like I don't understand that. And in 12 minutes, I understood everything. And I sort of had a little green light come on in my brain and say, like, maybe there's something here. So I pitched it to a few people. And again, 2000, whatever it was, 2015, you had to explain to someone what a podcast was. And I did 6 episodes and I was like, I'll just put this out into the world and see how it goes. Still got 10,000 downloads the first month. And I think we just sort of stepped in it. We didn't really know I definitely didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah. I think I
But
remember that starting up.
it was
Because
weird.
yeah, yeah.
And I think I just approached it differently, not because it was strategic.
Mm-hmm.
Some people can't wait to show you thought leadership, which is like a great strategy, right? It's 2025. Starting a podcast, barrier to entry, super low, right? You can generate a ton of content. You can cut this episode up into a bunch of little clips and share audio and video on YouTube, and you
Mm-hmm.
can do all those things. I couldn't wait to show you how how little I knew, not how much I knew. But I was able to say like, well, I do like interviewing or talking to people, and I do have a little bit of a skill because I did it for 15 years. So I came at it like reverse. Like I can't wait to show you how little I know. But in 30 minutes, you and I, the listener, we're going to learn something.
Mm-hmm.
So the goal for each episode was have fun and learn something. Have fun and learn one thing. If you can hit that as your minimum viable product, you got something.
Yeah.
And yeah, 1,600 episodes later in 9.5 years, I've talked to a lot of people.
Well, congratulations on your success with that. That's such a fascinating
Thank you.
story. And I think it illustrates that what you're talking about between the presentation style versus conversational style and how we learn. And if you look back where we were, say, 10 years ago, right, in the profession, there really wasn't much of those types of conversations happening, right? Everything was maybe at an APTA conference. And so you kind of felt on an island sometimes as a practice owner, and you were trying to reach out to different business groups or things like that. But we have seen a change, I think, over time, and
Big.
certainly you're one of those people in that component. But I think we're seeing even more, and especially as social media got much more popular. There's a lot more coaches and people having those types of conversations, different groups out there. And it can really help, I think, as a practice owner, when you can immerse yourself and keep those communication lines with lots of different experts in the field and conversations, and a lot of times just learn from other practice owners.
It's voyeuristic at its best, right? I mean, we're talking at Friday, June 20th. This will be released a day, a week, a month later, whatever it is.
Mhm.
And because we don't need this to be formal, like there's an outline, like, and I create an outline, right? That's that's not a script though. There's a difference there.
Yeah.
But you're right. Like, and I wrote a LinkedIn post that got like 50,000 impressions a month ago, and it was half of all APTA chapters or components will be gone in 5 years. And the reason I wrote that is what you're saying is that was the only way to get information 10, 15 years ago.
Hmm.
I've been around, I graduated in 2016, so I haven't even been out for 10 years, and I've seen a monumental shift. And I want the APTA components to exist. I want them to understand they used to have the most expensive real estate in town because they were just it.
Hmm.
They're not anymore because Neil has a podcast. He needs no permission. The barrier to entry is crazy low. There's some effort there, but nothing's good information is going to find it's the audience is now the ultimate decider. But you had to be APTA member to get that information 15, 10 years ago. You don't anymore. So if that's their lead value proposition, that scares the crap out of me if I'm an APTA president for a chapter or a section or a component. And I think that goes, it's exactly the same for businesses. You
Hmm.
used to have to be the big dog in town to learn or do things. You don't anymore. Like if
No.
there's any, if we, we're 12 minutes in this conversation, if there's one thing you take away, the distance between you and finding information or your perfect anything is the thickness of the glass in your cell phone. That's how far away they are. Now, it's simple, not easy, but that's sort of why how I want people to look at it.
Yeah, the playing field has changed a lot, right? And even in that respect, where I think if, and this is what I try to tell practice owners all the time, is that you have the capability to compete against the big dogs, right?
Big
And
time.
so
Yes.
if you've got a corporate practice that has 1,000 locations, yeah, they got some clout, they got some marketing budget, all that kind of stuff, but you still have the ability, if you're smart and if you work with the right people, to have your website found just in comparison to that person in your community, in your area. So you're right in that it does, there is a more equal playing field in that regards.
I got a story. It doesn't seem like it makes any sense, but it does. It's quick, I promise. So in Northeast Pennsylvania, it's Radio Market 69 or something like that. That's where I worked. When the Foo Fighters would come to town, Dave Grohl would still do a phone call or he'd come to the radio station and do an interview. The freaking Foo Fighters. And I'm
Hmm.
like, I turn to the record rep and I go, they don't need to be doing this. And he goes, yeah, but no. And I'm like, that doesn't matter. That doesn't make any sense, man. We had between 500,000 and 300 and 750,000 people listening to my radio station at any given time on a good day.
Hmm.
And I was like, but they're the Foo Fighters, man. They got millions of fans. And he gave me this great lesson. They have millions of fans worldwide. You cannot out Foo Fighter the Foo Fighters worldwide. But you have more listeners in this geographic area than they have fans in this geographic area. So
Yeah.
they know they need to put 25,000 butts in the stadium to sell out. They understand that you have a deeper relationship. You're with these people every day of the year. They know you. So when they work with you, they're stronger because of it. Now, you could look at this from a different perspective. Like if you're in a city with a giant conglomerate, like, well, they've got budget and numbers and this and this and this. It's hard to turn an aircraft carrier. My brother was on one. It takes forever to turn that thing around. So
Hmm.
they might have size and power and all these things. But if you're a speedboat, don't try to out aircraft carrier the aircraft carrier. But they can't out speedboat the speedboat. So
Hmm.
understand your own strengths and play to them. And understand also the ocean is also the internet. The rules change every once in a while. So know which way the tide is going.
Yeah, that's a fantastic analogy. I love it. And you're right in that a local practice really has that ability to build those local relationships, right? Where it's very difficult for bigger entities to do that. So I love that analogy. And you've talked to a lot of different people in the industry over the years. Are you seeing a difference now, like an inflection point in the industry, as far as we see insurance reimbursements being more and more of a headache, but we do see a change in how people are bringing in cash-based services, hybrid services. So what are you noticing in the industry in regards to that?
So I think I came into the profession in a unique time. In 2015, 2016, when I was graduating, someone starting a practice at a school was like blasphemous. It was like disrespectful to the profession, right?
Mhm.
You got to work somewhere for 5 to 10 years before you did that. And then there was a few people saying, you don't. And look, this person over here is doing it. So what I've noticed is you still have those conversations, but less of the people are chiming in saying, no, I disagree with you. They're just going and doing it. They're
Mhm.
just doing it. Um, the things that I also notice are there's always going to be, and I hate if you're named Karen, but it's now a cliche. Like you got the Karens who are complaining about, reimbursement. I got news for you. I'm not a pundit, but that's probably not going to go up anytime soon. So
Yeah.
pretend it's going to keep going down. What are you going to do about it? If it's the answer, bitch about it in the Facebook group. Okay. When you're done, the problem's still there. What are you going to do about it? So people are now taking, I think, more onus and saying, all right, well, that's going to continue to happen. By all means, advocate. That's not my bag. I'm glad someone's doing it, but it's probably not going to fix everything. It's, in fact,
Mhm.
I'll go on record. It's not going to fix everything. So what are you doing? I think people are leaning into different solutions, and water finds its level. It's showing the people that are actually going to adapt will be here 6 months or 6 years from now, and the people that won't, and they'll probably still be throwing a fist and arguing at insurance
Mhm.
companies. They're not paying attention to you. I got news for you. They don't care. They're a
Yeah.
big, huge machine, and they're going to keep machining. I think now more people are saying, okay, like take a look at what you do. Like marketing was not something that people even thought of as the top 30 things a clinician should do. And now you go on Instagram and you see people like individual clinicians, either they work for themselves or they're a clinician at a practice, just owning the fact that they're over communicating the things that they're good at.
Mhm.
And I think you had to twist arms 10 years ago to do that, and
Right.
now you can't get out of their way. There's people like me who are, experts at communication, watching people do things that I couldn't have told you how to do a year, 3, 5 years ago, and they're just iterating because the internet is the ultimate judge. It's just it's letting the audience actually decide.
Mhm. Absolutely. And I'm totally in 100% agreement there. Medicare, United Healthcare, they're not
It's
going
not
to say
happening.
you. They don't care about you, right? What we should always think about is what's the consumer want,
Correct.
right? And let's talk to our consumers. We just had a middleman for decades, which has been the insurance company. And for a long time, like I started in 1998 as a PT. So back then you could charge you got like $20 for a hot pack. It was good times. That all changed and insurance companies clamped down. And then we just saw, hey, it used to be $5 for a copay. Now it's like your deductible is $10,000.
Yeah, it's wild.
So the reality is that you're pretty much selling anyway to the consumer. So why even bother with some of these insurance companies, right? And I think
Correct.
the clinics that I see that are crushing it are the ones that have had that realization. Like, yes, we still work within the insurance networks, but there's so many other opportunities here
Right.
that we can serve our customers with that the customers want. And gosh, I mean, we look at what a time we are in for this profession. It's just exploding, right? And the opportunities here, the growth in the age group for the boomers, I mean, that's like prime growth right there. If we look at the health and wellness industry, which is supposed to reach like $3 trillion in the next 5 years, like everybody else is capitalizing on that. What are you doing as a clinic to capitalize on all this health and wellness? People want to take care of their bodies today. People want to live longer. They want to feel better when they're older. Like you go to massage, acupuncture, like vitamins, like all kinds of functional medicine. I mean, it's all out there and they're doing well, right? So we've got to like tap into that a lot better.
The top 10% of PT owners aren't just surviving, they're thriving. But what's their secret? Well, Neil Trickett's new Market to Grow book reveals how the top 10% of PT practices leverage marketing systems to simultaneously grow their new patients, attract top talent, and boost profit in their practice. You can learn from their secrets. Visit practicepromotions.net/book to claim your free copy of Market to Grow. Yes, you heard that right. We are shipping a free copy of Market to Grow to all podcast listeners who want it. Just visit practicepromotions.net/book to claim your free book. And now back to the show.
I think disassociating yourself from this is how it's always been done is I am a doctor of physical therapy and I stand still and you come to me and I tell you exactly what to do, I think those people aren't very well received anymore, right?
Mhm.
It's more of the people who have always built relationships, who listened. This doesn't mean you have to go with the trends, right? This doesn't mean you have to just incorporate a bunch of things that maybe you don't want to be working with.
Right.
But understand if someone's looking for something, meeting them where they are, that's your business. Your business is a guide, not the hero. And I think as soon as I think more people are understanding that now. I think we've passed the tipping point of more people understanding that I'm the guide, not the hero.
Mhm.
The patient is the hero in this story. How do I play that role? That's a great business to be in.
Yeah.
Being the guru, being the hero in that conversation, that's not a very great business to be in.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting to me is that PTs always, to me, tread the line between two worlds. One has been that very stiff medical world, right? Where
Yes.
you're trying to be the doctor, you're trying to be that really like super professional and let's have everything, evidence
Yes.
based, blah blah blah, right? And then the other side of it, which is more like, I mean, I'm not saying that this is how it is, but like if you think about your gyms and your personal trainers and
Sure.
that kind of, like, so we tread this line in between those. So like, sometimes we feel like, and then we look at our, even like the APTA and everything like that, the tend is trying to make it so medically professional, right? Trying to lean us into that. And that's, we have to have that, but then we also have to have the ability to be along that direct to consumer, being the long standing, I want to be your PT for life, and health and wellness aspect of it too. So that's the thing that I've always looked at from a distance, is that, okay, if you go too far left into that medical profession line, you get stuck in the whole insurance world. But if
Yep.
you go
A
too
conveyor
far,
belt.
then you're kind of stuck in just straight on cash based world, and that might be challenging to scale.
I'll show you an example of that too far to the left medical model in action. I was in a Facebook group. I love going in there just for the comments, man. I'm in the comments just eating popcorn all day, laughing, knowing that that's my next topic for an episode because they're telling me, right? So somebody jumped in a Facebook group and had a screenshot of a personal trainer's sort of ad. And the personal trainer was essentially saying, if you have osteoarthritis, moving more helps. I'm Steve, the personal trainer. And the caption was, look at this personal trainer without a DPT. Who does he think he is? And my question was, do we as a profession or medicine in general have some proprietary ownership to people with osteoarthritis? And the answer to that, of course, is no. But that person didn't want that answer from me. What they wanted me was to chime in and dogpile on, who does this trainer think he is? And
Yeah,
I looked at that trainer and I was like, that person's out there trying to solve someone's problems.
yeah.
Does that person also at some point might need a PT? I don't know.
Hmm.
Maybe they were discharged from PT and told to keep moving. And that trainer is a great person to send that person to. But I think that highlights like a real world example of like, we don't really know understand what value you bring. If it's your degree, I'm very sorry. You're not going to
Yeah,
make any money with just the degree outside of standing on the end of a conveyor belt, waiting for a referral to come in, doing whatever you want with it, taking exactly what you're going to get with that, which is the minimum, and then waiting for the next referral.
yeah,
So I think the people that don't do that succeed, and the people that
yeah.
do stand still.
Yeah, and I can remember, kind of from the old school here, but in PT school and just out of PT school, it was always like, poo poo on the chiropractors, right? And
Yep.
they can't be doing what we do, and we're much better than them, and all this other stuff, right? And then over the years, I'd see that the I and then started getting to more of that work, having my own practice, having my own business, having to market it, things like that. I'm like, those guys actually know what they're doing in terms of marketing, right? I mean, they've actually positioned themselves as the back pain care, neck pain care experts, right? And people go, "What's PT again?" Right? That's the thing. And so when I started practice promotions back in 2011, one of the things I would tell practice is like, if you ask someone on the street, have you heard of physical therapy? They would most likely get a yes. Like, I've heard of physical therapy before. If you ask that patient, like, well, what does a PT do? What do they help? They wouldn't really get a very good answer, a very straight answer.
Right. Right.
That's a positioning problem, marketing and branding and positioning problem as a profession. Now that's gotten
Correct.
better over the years, but we're still, I think we're coming more into the light now. It's still very much in its infancy.
Yeah, I
Oh,
think
you
number
gotta,
one is
oh,
accepting you have a problem. And I think when I came out of school in 2016, it was like the like selling or marketing was dirt. Like, oh, we don't do that. We stand here and we tell people well, we're a physical therapist and they will show up. And I'm like, that doesn't work. Like doctors don't do that. Like they would never. So step one is admitting you have a problem and leaning into it. I think number one, you're never going to change a profession doing anything. That's too many people. I think more people in the profession are apt to do what you're talking about, which is owning the distance between their ideal patient and themselves and owning the responsibility to close that distance.
Yeah, I love that. And you know, I just seen such a transformation here in our industry over time with understanding more about how they need to position and brand their practice, how marketing plays a role, how salesmanship plays a role. And I know that you recently did an episode around how therapists can sell without feeling icky. What were some of the key takeaways from that you had on that podcast?
If you honestly believe that what you know and can do with someone, again, guide and not hero, it is your professional duty to communicate that. It's actually in somewhere in APTA value statement or whatever. It's saying, but hiding that is is a disservice to society. So I'll give you an example. My dad was a New York City firefighter. They never had to sell stop, drop, and roll. They never had to sell call 911. They never sold that.
Mhm.
They sure as hell repeated the hell out of it to elementary school kids. I got to be honest, with the amount of times I was taught to stop, drop, and roll, I thought being on fire was going to be a bigger problem in my life. Turns out it wasn't. But if you're on fire, your
You know,
first reaction is to run around.
yeah.
So they beat the hell out of stop, drop, and roll into us. So my dad never had to sell stop, drop, and roll. But they communicated it because they believed this is an important thing for everybody to know. Understand 911, understanding how to put out a grease fire and how not to put out a grease fire, right? So if you change the well, it feels icky to sell. Great, don't. Really great salespeople never sell anything.
Mhm.
I make suggestions. You're going to make decisions. My job is to number one get as much information from you first instead of hitting you with a fire hose talking. So that's the first mistake people I think make is I can't wait to tell you all about PT and how great it is and why you should get it and everybody should get it and you not getting it is you're stupid. That's a giant mistake. So Chris Voss, have you ever read Chris Voss's Never Split the Difference?
No, I haven't read it, but I've seen some of his, videos and stuff.
Former hostage negotiator for the FBI, understood completely. Well, I could just yell at the person on the other end of the phone who's got hostages in a bank. That's not going to play out too well. He understood the goal was to get the other person talking. So asking questions. That's the ultimate set of keys that'll pick almost any lock. So I think doing that is a great way to sell. Using air quotes on a podcast here, so I'll shout it out to an air. Is how to sell without feeling icky. Is don't sell. Ask questions and help me understand. For the best words ever. Help me understand. Help me understand what your problem actually. Maybe you don't. You know what? I don't know. Actually, think maybe you don't need PT, but help me understand what your problems are. What have you tried? I mean, it should sound a lot like an evaluation because it is,
Right.
right? But they're not coming to you because of the degree or the modalities necessarily in your clinic. That might be part of it. They've tried some stuff or they're afraid of something right now and they want to get to something. So they look at you. The term guide is used intently. They want to help you get there. Can you get me there faster with less pain? Great. That's who I want to work with. So I think selling without feeling icky is asking a bunch of questions, fully understanding the problem, and then suggesting but not selling that you might actually understand how to get there faster.
Yeah, I love that. The thing that I see too, like for practices, is if you have a cancellation problem, a retention problem, patients dropping out, referrals, like the first thing I think you got to look at is how is the salesmanship within the clinic. And so we think of like salesmen as having to go out and to doctors, right? And sell to doctors. Well, the reality is we're selling all day long in our clinic. So your clinicians have to be great salespeople, like getting patients to comply with their plan of care. The front desk has to be an amazing salesperson to convert people who are wanting information about what you can do for them, as well as getting people to show up for appointments. Like that's huge salesmanship. And a lot of times if we're just selling, hiring someone to say answer the phones, we don't really look at their salesmanship type skills, right? And you don't have to be a salesman to do that, but just noticing how they approach those conversations, right? They, like you said, are they asking those kind of questions? Tell me about that. Tell me, like, how is that impacting you? Like, that's a huge thing.
Dr. Robert Cialdini is a psychologist. He wrote a couple of books that are like sort of looked at as psychology books, but about sort of influence. One of the books is called Influence, the other one's called Persuasion. And he loves to like look at how people make decisions and why. Right. So he has these ideas of these levers of reciprocity or
Hmm.
social proof, things that like are obvious, but he digs down. And he realized that he found a story of the most successful insurance salesman in the country was based in rural Iowa. Well, how the hell is this guy in rural Iowa smoking everybody in the big city? And he said he had one pitch. And the pitch was this. He'd meet Neil and go, Neil, let me ask you an honest question. If you had a machine that printed money in your basement, would you insure it to make sure it kept running as long as it could? What would your answer be?
Yeah, absolutely.
Hell yeah. Great. You're that money making machine for your family. So is it too crazy to understand why you should insure yourself? I mean, talk about that guy's batting average, 900. How do you say no to that analogy? But he
Right.
understood selling insurance might have been, well, we have these policies and they're really affordable and da, 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 da. He
Mhm.
understood what the thing he was actually selling, security. So he put it in an analogy that was easily comparable. He could deliver it in less than 35 seconds. So that's how the guy in rural Iowa really understood how to be the best insurance salesman in the country. He understood what game he was playing.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
we don't as a profession, but we're getting better.
We're getting better, yeah, yeah, and so I think for our listeners out there too, if you're wondering why your cancellation rate is so high, just kind of go and observe the front desk, see if they're asking those types of questions, especially like on new calls coming in, new leads coming in. Are they asking those types of questions? And then for your therapist too, like sometimes it's good just kind of sit in on an eval and just kind of see the dialogue, the questions that are being answered. Are they asking those questions that paint the picture around the future for the patient, right? So I
Yep.
love those analogies there, Jimmy. Now, one of the other episodes that you had was about skills every healthcare provider needs before 2030. So can you tell us more
Yeah.
about that?
Yeah, so this was in conjunction with a friend of mine who said she would never ever host a podcast, but she was so smart and so kind and so all these things that I like essentially wore her down. So this is in conjunction with Katie Sutton, who's a PTA. So she used the word just. Somebody, oh, I'm just a PTA. And I noticed PTA is doing this. I'm just. So we got together and I was like, there are some skills that cross no matter what you're really doing or you need to do in the future.
Mhm.
And wouldn't you know it, it's a lot of those skills that you can't automate or have artificial intelligence complete. So it's a lot of the soft skills. I gave a presentation a couple of years ago at a conference, and I was proud of the title. I thought it was cutesy. It was, why are these soft skills so damn hard? And I'll give a little bit of grace to therapists because nowhere in the PT school syllabus did it actually teach communication. Like
Mhm.
we learned the subjective exam, and I
Yeah.
remember looking at my classmates who were all a decade younger than me go, did you memorize the 20 questions we're supposed to ask on an eval? And I was like, no. Well, how are you going to pass this? I go, well, I'm going to ask the first question. And they go, how do you know what second question to ask? I go, I'm going to base it off the answer to the first question. And we're going to keep going until I got no more questions I can think of.
Right.
So the skills that you should have in 2030 are the things that can't be automated. Listen, AI could write your marketing copy now, right?
Hmm.
Kinda, right? But it's going to sound like you. Because if everybody's doing it, it's a wash now. Everybody's got access to $20 version of ChatGPT. How
Yeah.
can you differentiate from that? I think the thing that you just mentioned, taking a look at what the front desk is asking, how they're asking it, what their attitude, what the clinic smells like and sounds like, what the experience is like, and work on that. Because that whole great Venn diagram with the two circles crossing where it says things that actually matter and things that you can control, where those two circles those are the only things you should be paying attention to.
Yeah.
So I can't rage against artificial intelligence. I can't rage against insurance company. I mean, I can. It's not going to do anything. I'm just going to waste air at a Facebook, group chat. But so it's the soft skills, which is what can set me apart. What am I good? And it's going to change for each person.
Mhm.
What am I actually good at? What do I like doing? One of the things I did recently was the 6 types of working genius. It's this quick assessment. It's a personality assessment, and it's cute, but it doesn't focus on skills. It focused more on activities and if they give energy to you or take energy from you. So when you look at your day, are you saying, man, I'm doing a lot of these tedious activities that need to get done, but it kills me? That's something to offload.
Hmm.
But these other things that need to get done, they give me energy. I could do this all day, right? Like obviously me talking and doing idea generation. I can do this all day. I get energy from this.
Yeah.
So really doing a self-assessment of like, what do I actually bring to the table? How can I use that speedboat analogy? How can I actually outspeedboat the aircraft carrier? Because you're never going to out aircraft carrier the aircraft carrier. You can't do it. So the skills are the soft ones, in my opinion, you need before 2030.
So the skills, right? So I like that because we see all this news, right, about AI and all these new systems that are coming up, and they're so important to the efficiencies within the clinic, and that's one component. But sometimes we focus so much on efficiencies within the clinic that we forget about the product.
Correct.
Right, the product is really that customer experience, the outcome of that patient. Are they going to go back, tell their doctor? Are they going to go back, tell their friends and family? That's what's going to feed the machine back. So it the skills component, what you're talking about there, is probably the most critical thing. And how are you developing those skills for each person within your clinic?
I got yelled at by a clinical instructor. I won't say who it was because I talked to the patients too much. Now, like, if I talked to them for 90 minutes, like I could see
Yeah.
that. But I remember, like, she was like, "You've got 45 minutes, so the first 3 minutes is chit chat, and that's getting their information." And I remember thinking, like, if this is how it's done, I don't want to do it. Like, this
Yeah.
sucks. This is a conveyor belt, right? She was also one to tell me, like, you tell the same joke over and over again. I was like, well, first of all, I'm going to do that forever, right? But I realized I had a new audience every 45 minutes, so I
Yeah.
can get away with
Fine.
telling them. But that just shows you like emotional intelligence. Sometimes people are there for a laugh. Some people are there because they're going through some stuff.
Yeah.
And reading the differences between the two is simple, but not easy, but also powerful. Being able to read those things is going to be hard to replace with automation or artificial intelligence, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And we can all think of that one therapist in our clinic that just is so good at relationships, right? They get like incredible outcomes, or maybe they get average outcomes with their patients, but the patients absolutely love them, right? Because they usually have those soft skills, right? They can talk well, they have communication, people, they build the relationship part of that, interaction, and they'll usually have a very good percentage of arrivals of patients because the patients really like coming to see them, right?
Correct. I did an episode early on. I did it with a guy by the name of Eric Mera. And Eric was an outspoken PT on Twitter. He had one of the first PT podcasts that I had ever heard of. So I reached out to him, got him on my show, and was just couldn't wait to ask him all the questions. And he had worked in professional sports. And at that time, I was still like, maybe that's what I want to do. And I said, what does someone need to have? I was waiting for like a list of 20 things, certifications and skills. What does someone need to have to work in professional athletics? And he goes, you're going to hate my answer. I was like, okay, great. What is it? And he said, it's the three A's. It's available. In professional sports, he was like, you got to be available nights, weekends. When someone needs you, you're there. It's their body is their life. So available. Affable. I need you to be a person people want to work with. These are athletes, but this goes for everybody. This is transferable to everybody. You, we have choices. Just Google it or walk down the street. There's other choices. So they better like at least this is table stakes. Like working with you. And the final A that he said was adequate. I was ready with this guy with certifications and years of experience, and he teaches Con Ed to say like amazing 99 out of 100 clinical skills. He's like, you need to be adequate. You need to know the basics. You need to do them over and over again. So affable, available, adequate. He goes, you have those three and you like doing it, it'll show. You have a chance of success in professional sports. I remember like that was like episode 2. I remember just being like, wait a minute, really? So maybe this now that's simple to say, not necessarily
Yeah.
easy to do, but
Yeah.
I think that's transferable to anybody in any clinic or any business really. I gotta want to do business with you. You gotta be likable. Doesn't mean I need to love you or be best friends, but you got to be adequate and do the job well and available for me. Those three things were the triumvirate, and I remembered that advice from Eric from 9.5 years ago.
I love that. That's awesome. And so, is that then maybe a part of that, or being part of? What would you say is like the kind of core mindset then of a successful practice owner? Like, what do you see that being like?
Simon Sinek has that book Start with Why, which I think is great. I'm going to disagree with Simon Sinek. So number one, be controversial, right? Get a little. So I don't disagree with him too much, but a little bit. He says start with why. I say start with who.
Mhm.
So starting with who the heck you actually want to serve. Do you like delivering this care, right? Just because you are a pelvic therapist doesn't mean that you have to do that, or a sports book. Do you like doing this? So starting with the person you want to serve, and then asking 2 questions. What are the problems that they have? What are their big problems? All of them. Write them all down. They have a flat tire. They have pain in their shoulder. Write everything down. They have tax problems. Everything. And then what are you good at and like solving? What are you available, adequate, and affable at solving? Where those two things cross, listen, I'm not going to help you with taxes. I can't always help you with a flat tire, but the pain in the shoulder I can do. And then tripling down on doing that and communicating it 5,000% more than the next person.
Yeah.
Because available, affable, and adequate is going to win.
Yeah. Fantastic advice. I think one thing I would just add to that is looking at within the public, is there sufficient need for it too? Because,
perfect. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Right? Because we got to do what we really enjoy. We got to serve a public that really has that need, and is it a large enough public, right? Because so we might get down to we really love TMJ. How big of a market really is TMJ?
Correct.
Right? And
Correct.
so, but if you have shoulder, oh my gosh, that's like probably one of the most predominant things that we treat, right? So if you really enjoy shoulders, you can narrow down that alley, right? So love that.
Have you ever heard of the Ikigai? It's a Japanese theory. It's a Venn diagram. I mean, you can obviously tell in this conversation I love me some Venn diagrams. It's 4 circles that overlap. And what it says is Ikigai means reason for being. And it just says, can you find something at the intersection of these 4 circles? Do you love it? Are you good at it? Does the world need it? Which is what you just said. And can you get paid for it? Because 3 out of 4 in that is bad. If the world didn't need it, and that's all I wanted to do, right? All I want to do is this thing that not enough people need. I'm not going to be able to build a life around that. So that's a great point, which is understanding the rest of the world and where you fit in it as well. Self-awareness.
Yeah, love that. So you've done a ton of podcasts. You've interviewed a lot of experts. Do you have a favorite episode or favorite expert you've chatted with? Is it me?
It is. This is a tough question to answer, because you're going to alienate some people, right? Like, wait, I was on the show, but he didn't say me. But I get to cop out of that in a good way. So in my 3rd year in PT school, I was ready to quit. I knew I didn't want to be in a clinic. I knew I loved the profession and what it did, but I was like, this isn't me. So the closer I got to graduation, the more squirrely I got. Everybody around me was so sure of what they were doing, and I was like, I don't know where I'm going to fit. We did a mission trip to Costa Rica, and I met an 18-year-old kid named Hayner. He had CP, so he was in a tilt and space wheelchair all day, every day. And I thought I was there to teach those people those kids in the orphanage what I knew and show them how smart I was. And I learned so much from Hayner on how happy he was. The kid barely had anything and was the happiest kid on the planet. So the thing that pissed me off, whenever I see a problem that I can't solve, it makes my brain sort of itchy. So if he were in the United States, he would have a power wheelchair. But he was in an orphanage in Costa Rica. So this was year 1 of the podcast. And we wound up using the podcast to tell Hayner's story enough that we raised about $30,000 to buy him a tilt and space wheelchair. The university, Marymount, got involved and said, we're going to let's run with this story. We've got a student who's raising money for a wheelchair. They flew me back down there. So I was able to record an episode where we taught him we gave him the gift that everybody helped buy for him. And we taught him how to use it. And I realized that there's a place for people who can communicate. I didn't know anything about wheelchair seating and mobility. I wasn't going to cure CP. You can't. But I was able to use those skills and the things I liked, was good at. The world needed it, right? And I made some money for him for that. So I realized there was a place to do it. So I get to say that's my favorite episode because it taught me a lot. But it was really about him teaching me a lot.
I love that. Yeah, so I think that's a very valuable lesson in that you gotta follow your passion, right? And sometimes you don't know what your passion is at the beginning. You gotta develop it, right? And I same boat for me. Like, I really enjoyed treating patients, and that's always been fun. And then running a practice was interesting. I enjoyed the challenge of learning about business and developing skills in that area. And then I just always really enjoyed, as part of the clinic, the marketing aspect, right? And being able to create and design stuff and things like that. And so I said, hey, there's an opportunity to help a lot more people, a lot of others similar to me, by getting into the marketing space. So I think for anybody here, like, you can start out with whatever, but don't feel like you have to be limited to that. But what are your natural gifts, your aspirations? And again, can you tell me the name of the Japanese
Ikigai,
Ikigai, okay.
Ikigai. Yeah, if you look at it,
Yeah.
it's super simplistic.
Yeah.
It looks like an orchid, or it
Yeah.
looks like a flower. The Japanese are famous for it, but it's simple,
Hmm.
not easy to necessarily find that, but at least it's great guardrails and it's
Yeah.
practical.
Yeah, and I think you can even apply that to like as far as professional development within your
100%.
practice. Right, absolutely.
100%.
Yeah. Cool. So Jimmy, any final words for our listeners here?
I would say nobody is going to communicate your value, your business, what you can provide as well, as passionate, as accurate, as clear, as often as you. You might not need to know how to do it. You can figure it out. You can learn. We are in an information age where you can, in your pocket, have access to the most information that's ever been created, or hire someone to do it, right? If you don't like to do it, but you still think, I don't like to do taxes, but they need to get done. So I hire someone. I say I would rather trade you my money to do this. It is vitally important if you have a practice. If you're not doing it, right? This was from triathlon. Your competition is training when you're not. When you race him, he will beat you, right? Your competition is communicating when you're not. When the ideal patient you have is ready to make a decision, you might get beat because of something not clinically or not something that you didn't have in your business because they didn't know.
Yeah.
And you have to own that. That's on you.
Fantastic. Love it there. And so Jimmy, what's the best way for people to start following you and listen to your podcast?
Yeah, got in early. So at PT Pintcast and all the socials, and that's the website. But if you look for PT Pintcast or physical therapy, usually if you search on the apps or whatever, we typically come up with the beer logo.
I love it. Jimmy, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thanks,
I know I got a ton out of it today, so did our listeners. And so for our listeners out there, definitely go to ptpintcast.com or just follow, like you said, search physical therapy or PT Pintcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and start following Jimmy on that. Again, for us, don't forget to subscribe to the Practice Marketing Podcast as well as our YouTube channel. We've got tons of free advice for you on there, and at practicepromotions.net, tons of downloads for you to help accelerate the marketing in your practice. So this is Neil Trickett from the Practice Marketing Podcast, wishing you much success in your practice.
A free way for you to support our show is by leaving a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts. It's a chance for you to tell us what you love about the show, and it helps others discover it as well. Just scroll down to ratings and review on your phone and click write a review. Thanks.